You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast of nerdy topics for fellow nerds. See, you're not alone, no matter what those lacrosse kids told you.
This is Nerd Best Friends, episode 5. I've seen this before. This is Analese, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey everybody, it's Rob, and we have a special guest host this week, my son, Andrew.
Before we talk about the episode, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of the nerdy things that you like to do?
Nerdy things I like to do? I like to do all the nerdy things. I play Dungeons and Dragons, play the Warhammers, play the video games all the time.
What's your favorite video game?
I really liked Insomniac Spider-Man PS4 again. That was really fun.
And you could add to that, you're a big Marvel nerd and a comic book nerd.
Totally. Comics.
Andrew is 12. He's headed off to junior high school. Also a bit of a theater nerd, getting there.
I'll also brag for you, Andrew. You are a book nerd. You read books like I drink water. So I've had very great conversations with you about nerding out about books like Harry Potter but you've actually recommended books for me to read, which is amazing because I'm such a book nerd. I appreciate it.
Just a couple of book nerds, nerding about books.
And super happy to have you on the show for what I will imagine is the first of a handful of times we're going to have you on the show because of your expertise and some of those things you're nerd out about. So I'm excited to have you. Today, I've seen this before. It was actually drawn and brought up by Andrew himself.
This movie is about a lonely guy in a boring job where every day is the same.
Until one day, he meets a beautiful woman in black leather who leads him down the rabbit hole.
With a small red object, his eyes are opened to a new world of existence.
He learns that the real villains are the establishment and escapes his dreary life with the help of the lady in black and her awesome kung fu.
The protagonist learns of the prophecy that makes him the most important person in the world.
And a black guy with a cool voice tells him all about this magical world.
Members of the team are captured by the corporation drones, and the protagonist must mount a desperate rescue mission against a skyscraper full of bad guys.
The hero then sees the world as it truly is and gains the power to save the day.
This movie is, of course,
The
Lego
Matrix.
Movie.
So here we are at episode 5. Lovely, wonderful introduction. I've seen this before. The first of what we imagine will be many episodes throughout the seasons of our podcast, comparing two movies that are alike in nature. Today being The Matrix and the Lego Movie.
So you had not seen the Lego Movie?
I had
before we
not.
decided to do this.
And I watched it as preparation to this episode. Ironically, I had seen the second Lego Movie because I was with my nieces and nephews when it premiered, and I took them and they gave me just a little synopsis. Oh, this is what kind of happened according to their 8 and 10-year-old minds.
And much like the second Matrix movie, it sucks.
It was okay. It was entertaining. The kids had fun. We ate popcorn. It was a good time. But I had not seen the first one, so I did watch it. It was really hard to not see The Matrix because we were talking about preparing for this. I thought it was cute in a lot of ways to bring in the real life of what Legos was. I love the breaking of the fourth wall when you get towards the end and figuring out that it's a kid playing this out in secret because his dad doesn't let him touch the Legos. I thought that was a really cute little connection at the end. And, the family story in the end that the dad learns to let go a little bit. But I'm interested to hear more about this movie comparison for sure. Before we get to that, do you have a craft beer of the episode for this episode, Rob?
I do. If you are sitting back on this warm day enjoying a beer along with us, my craft beer of the episode this time is going to be Summer Bliss by New Belgium. This was my New Brew Thursday check-in recently. What's interesting about this beer is tropical is no lie. This is a tropical wheat. It tastes like pineapple and coconut. It's like a pina colada in a beer. It's a little bit sweeter than what I would normally choose, but it is certainly unique. A couple things cool about New Belgium. New Belgium is a brewery. They have 2 locations. one in Colorado and one in, I think, North Carolina. Beautiful facilities. I've only seen them online, but they would be super cool to visit one day. And they look like a pretty cool corporation. The other thing that's super cool about them is normally their cans have this character that looks like it's a skeleton character that dresses up in different outfits for the different labels. It looks like the bottom of a skateboard in the 80s. It's got this retro look. It's very reminiscent of like Iron Maiden. All the Iron Maiden albums have Eddie on them, and it's like that guy zombie looking dude in different outfits. They do the same thing with their beer cans. They have this skeleton that they put on their cans, and they always have awesome art, and they have pretty good beer. That's the craft brew of the episode.
Wonderful. And two things happened while Rob was describing the craft beer of the episode. The first one is you compared pina coladas with beers, which doesn't sound like it'd be good, but through your description, maybe worth a try. But the second thing there, if for you music nerds out there, if you didn't catch Andrew humming the song about pina coladas in the background while Rob was describing the beer, go back and listen. It's there. Good work, Andrew.
Yeah. A little Easter egg for those attentive viewers.
Absolutely.
That song is not about pina coladas, and the song is terrible.
And the fact that he knows it is wonderful. We'll just leave it at that. It is lyrics, misunderstood lyrics as a nerd. Nerd corrections from episode 4 on Kickstarter, I think we're good. We've not been alerted to any nerd corrections, so we're going to skip that for the episode and go right into, I've seen this before, Matrix and the Lego Movie.
All right. So our movie begins much the same way. I think the Matrix also begins with like a little vignette of the computer screen going across and some sort of conversation between Morpheus and Trinity about the one. And sure enough, the Lego Movie starts with a little vignette of the wizard. What's the wizard character's name?
We just watched this.
The wizard character talking about the prophecy. And then smash cut to Neo in bed, waking up with an alarm or a phone ringing or a pager or something like that. The same way that Emmett in the Lego Movie wakes up to his day. Neo's starts a little bit different, of course, because there's a knock on the door and there's all kinds of like weird people there that are asking him for his hacker stuff, where in the Lego Movie, we get a super cool video montage that opens up all the kids' movies. But looking at it it's like you were saying, I couldn't not think of the Matrix when I was watching this, as they're singing the Everything is Awesome song and they're going through the city and stuff like that. And they're just delighting in how every day is the same and everything, happens over and over and everybody likes the same things and everybody looks the same. Were you thinking like, oh, this is clearly dystopian?
I remember the Matrix opening with Neo, and it's kind of a introduction to what he knows, Neo in the Matrix, and then it goes back to where we meet him before he met. But I did not rewatch The Matrix in preparation for this. I had just seen it recently. I always thought that was Keanu Reeves' voice, but I could be wrong there. We might have to nerd correct that next episode. Where it kind of defaults a little bit and it's different is that when Neo wakes up and he hears that knock at the door, we as the audience kind of already know what a typical day in life of a working class person in the United States would look like, versus the Lego Movie has to kind of pan that out for a kid.
I say that there's world building in both, because we don't see him like sitting at his desk in his suit and tie at the beginning of the movie. He's sleeping and somebody knocks on the door and he has to go through all these like weird cobbled together 90s computers and wires and servers all over the place, and opens up a special like tin box with all these weird different disc sizes. And I think he takes out like a little Sony mini disc and gives it to this clearly criminal element. Like there's definitely some world building there that sets up that character as like, oh, well, this character has a skill and they might be involved in something else. Where with the Lego Movie, we get, oh, this is our prime character. He's just like everybody else.
Which I think is a prime difference between Neo and Emmett, is like Neo is already different than the rest of the society, whereas Emmett is the model citizen. Right?
What I like that was so much the same is in that opening scene on his computer screen, he gets like a little note that says, follow the white rabbit. And then when he meets those criminals, the girl has a little white rabbit tattoo. In the Lego Movie, he's walking through the construction site and accidentally falls down a hole, which they make it like this comedic thing where it shows kind of a cutaway of the Earth or whatever. But he also goes down the rabbit hole, which I thought was really just on the nose, pretty funny.
I really enjoyed that scene. It reminded me a little bit of Super Mario Brothers and just bouncing around comically through those tunnels in a way that you couldn't even do in a video game. I thought that was really funny. I agree with you, Andrew, that Neo kind of knows that there's something else. He knows that there's this other. I always got the impression that they had somewhat communicated with him on some level that he is aware of some things before he even sees the girl with the white rabbit tattoo.
But it's also the same in that when we, like Mr. Anderson, Neo comes across in Act 1, he is the stand-in for the Gen Xer, right? It's like, oh, every day's the same. It's dreary. I have to wear this tie. I sit in a cubicle. I'm just put down by the man. I know that there's something wrong. There's something deep inside of me that's artistic. I used to have so much fun in high school. I used to have these dreams, and now I'm stuck here. Where flash forward 20 years later, Emmett is that millennial stand-in instead, right? Oh, I wake up every day. I go to this job. I go to this gentrified neighborhood where everybody says good morning. I go pay for expensive coffee just like everybody else. I watch all the same streaming platforms and things that everybody else does. There's probably more out there for me, but this is how it is.
I've seen this before spirit, the whole opening with Emmett reminded me of Idiocracy.
Oh, sure.
A little bit, especially with the Where's My Pants television show. It really reminded me of Idiocracy. I bet we could do some layers there, because there you have a character who falls into this, out of this world, realizing that there's more ways to use your brain and has to save the world. And it's also pretty similar in that vein. That's what that opening of the Lego movie reminded me of.
What does he find when he goes down the rabbit hole?
What does he find when he goes down the rabbit hole? He finds a cylindrical-ish red object. And once he interacts with it, his entire worldview and perception start to change as more and more is revealed to him about the evil establishment. Absolutely. And the man.
Yep, it's the red pill, right? And it opens up that there's something else out there. Things are not what they seem.
Can I mention it took me an embarrassingly long time, and spoiler alert, if you have not seen the Lego movie for some reason, or The Matrix, might not be the episode for you. I guess we could have said that earlier, but it took me an embarrassingly long time to realize that what he was carrying around was the cap to the crazy glue.
Well, they don't introduce the crazy glue until later. Like, it definitely, they string you along purposefully with it. It's pretty good.
But even after you realize it's a crazy glue, it was maybe towards the end when he was trying to put the cap back on. I went, oh, it's the cap. Embarrassingly long time to realize that. So yeah, red pill, red cap. That's a great similarity. What else? What's next?
After that, we get the info dump, right? And we were introduced to, in one movie, it's Lawrence Fishburne. And in the other movie, it's
Vitruvius is the name of the wizard.
Morgan Freeman.
Thank you.
Shawshank, come on now.
In one, we get this info dump from Lawrence Fishburne, and in the other one, we get it from Morgan Freeman. But it's very similar where, all right, I'm going to do this cool voiceover in my deep, sultry actor voice as we see seeds of what the world is really like, whether it be the agents with Agent Smith as their leader, or, you know, the robot corporate drones with Bad Cop as their leader. It's the same setup.
I really thought they were going to go Terminator 2 with Bad Cop. I'm glad they didn't. That was actually a really great character.
There is incredible acting in the Lego movie. Liam Neeson absolutely nailed. It's so funny. It's so good. He just leans into it with the two voices. He knows he's doing those two voices. He really like Scottishes out when he does the voice of his parents and stuff. Like, it's really good.
Elizabeth Banks as the female character in the Matrix. In the Lego movie.
As Wildstyle.
Another great voice. Wildstyle, yes, thank you. So
good. And they just hang a lampshade on the whole thing, which is another like purposeful nod to the Matrix where, you know, she dresses like she dresses and stuff. And he's like, who are you? Wild Style? Wild Style? Are you that same girl that was all insecure and kept changing her name to try to look cool and wore all black? Like, they just put the lampshade on it, and I love that.
So we get the red pill or the red object, and we get the introduction of the mentor-ish story dump character.
Right. So who is Batman in the Matrix?
That is a tough one, because in this case,
he just steals the show, right? So in the Matrix, right, you have the ship and you have the crew of the ship, and they all have their little personalities and help you unravel the world and stuff like that. And in the Lego movie, they do the same thing. They just keep bringing in the pirate guy and the spaceship, the Charlie Day spaceship builder guy, and all those things. So there's that cast of characters, but man, does Batman steal the show.
Batman is a lot of comedic relief in a very heavy storyline for a kid's movie, which is surprising to me. And I actually have a question for, if we sidebar for a second, is Batman played as oblivious and out there in the Batman Lego movie?
That character,
or is he more serious?
Oh no, that character is Batman in the Batman Lego movie. I think
that's hilarious.
That movie is made because of how just show stealing the performance of Batman was in this movie. And that character goes forward, and it is incredible. An absolutely wonderful movie.
Do you remember the scene in the Lego movie where Batman got in the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo and Chewbacca, and then stole their hyperdrive and came back? And then can you imagine that character in their own solo movie?
I absolutely could, which confuses me a little bit in this sidebar that we've talked about. Rob, you saying the Lego Batman movie may be the most complete Batman movie. Mm-hmm. I really have to see it now, because I like some of the Batman movies that were made, and I can't imagine Batman being that aloof, for lack of a better word. But I will say the biggest laugh I got from that whole movie was Batman pretending he doesn't know who Bruce Wayne is, and everyone else standing around going, we know it's you. Yes. Just, can you stop? And he's like, Bruce Wayne, he must be a good-looking guy without a mask. And just whatever his lines are. That was the biggest laugh from him. It was like, this guy right here, and just perfectly acted. Great comedic relief. But you're right. Where does that fit? I think there's a couple of characters in a couple of moments that provide the comedic relief there. Certainly the young kid when Neo first gets to the Matrix, when he's first in those worlds, willing to hook him up with a date with the girl in the red dress. That's a nice little comedic moment after all these really serious things happening. I think the two brothers, the one that sits behind the screens, he quips a little bit. They're not aloof. There's certainly not that much of comedic relief in the Matrix, but if there were to be a comparison, I think a couple of those characters could be bits and pieces. But
yeah, I mean, it's a colorful crew that helps build the world and helps give like a sense of community and what it's like aboard the ship and what it's like in the other world, just like the master builders do for the Lego movie. But yeah, I almost feel like there were some personalities that were just too big, and Will Arnett's Batman, I think he got there and read some lines, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're like, you know what, we need more of this. Let's just keep writing scenes for Batman into this movie because it's so good.
And certainly the movie's made for kids, so the more laughs, the more comedic relief, the better. So it's not just all dreary and serious, because that does lead us to two pieces that I see the similarities. The one being the protagonist has to realize that everything he knows about the world is not true.
I'm just laughing about Batman back
then. The perfect 12-year-old answer. I saw those similarities, right? Neo has to be informed, or he's informed and opens his mind to the fact that the world as he knew it was a machine. And same with Emmett in the Lego movie. The world as he knew it was a ruse.
Yeah, but is it different? What is the lesson there? Because I think in the Lego movie, the lesson is... What is the lesson? Is the lesson you don't always have to follow the instructions, be creative, step outside of the box?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, right? It's about expressing your originality.
Because really the character that learns the lesson is the bad guy, right? Like, does Emmett is the protagonist of the movie, but the point or the finale of the movie is them convincing the others to change their ways. Like, it teaches the other person a lesson.
Unwilling protagonist, if you will, in both of the movies, the great one, the special one, the chosen one, not only doesn't realize that's who they are, they are the missing piece, as you said. They are the piece that's kept the quote unquote good side from winning. In Emmett's case, it's actually by following the instructions.
That's right.
Instead of the other way around, of Emmett has to convince the master builders to follow instructions. They put together a really worthwhile plan and follow the instructions instead of just building what they know how to build and using all of their strengths. In The Matrix, Neo is his chosen one. He doesn't believe it. Most of the people around him doesn't believe it, but he is a missing piece in that once he discovers his abilities, he's able to fight the agents. And that was a piece that their world was missing all of that time. They don't have the power, they don't have the resources, and they can't face the agents. And that one missing piece is Neo being able to do that.
Both of them use the rules of oppression to like turn it back on the evil, right?
Exactly.
On the evil.
Exactly. So their special power ends up being because they knew and understood the rules.
Is the moral of the Lego movie that everyone has a creative spark in them?
That is a big heavy theme in the Lego movie, right? Is like everyone is special. They're just people. Anyone has that creativity if you just let it go. Where the lesson or theme of the Matrix might be wake up, sheeple, fight the establishment, Rage Against the Machine plays.
Yeah, I agree with both of those thoughts. Andrew, you make a really good point that the Lego movie can be a little confusing in that way too, right? Because the father learns to not go by the instructions and build the things perfectly, the city the way it's supposed to be sitting, and
Play,
the son
imagination
learns,
are worthy endeavors, and also.
But the son also learns by him building that city, they can have that play. That both have to exist simultaneously.
Maybe another possible moral is that you can accomplish anything if you work together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because,
because it says so right in the song.
It says
everything
so right
is
in the
awesome.
song. Everything is awesome when you work with a team.
Oh, that is awesome.
Maybe that's why they take so much time to have all these very distinct characters to show that when they work together, they can do the thing. They can follow the instructions and build a space oil truck. And then also in the real world, the father and the son learn to work together to play with the Legos as a family. And then also the sister comes in and makes a bad sequel, but maybe it's about working together.
But tell me what you really think about double-decker couches.
The argument against double-decker couches of if you're sitting on the bottom deck, are you looking through the dangling legs of the people above you is what really made me think, oh yeah, that is a stupid idea.
I mean, I think the other good point there was the person who's on the top middle can't come down off the couch unless they climb over people.
Or jump down and twist their ankle or land on the coffee table.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
The other thing is the only reason it's cool is because they like magically somehow fit in the coolers that were under the seats. There wasn't room for a minifig in there. Like, it's not, they cheated on that. The double-decker couch is
but at that point, Emmett needed a win. At that point, he needed a win, and that was a convenient way to give him a win so that at least the plot could move forward.
Like, if you're a film writer and you're looking for a Chekhov's double-decker couch, then you can do a Chekhov's double-decker couch, but it does not function as a seating arrangement.
I figured it out. Batman is the telephones of the Matrix. Whenever they're in trouble and they have to escape or something goes bad, a phone rings or there's they figure out there's a phone 2 floors above you that is a landline that you can pick up and it'll save you. And so they have to run around and they escape with the phone. In the Lego movie, every time something bad is going to happen, all of a sudden Batman swoops in with his Batwing or a power generator or whatever. Batman is the telephones of the Matrix.
That's pretty interesting, considering the telephone as a character or a functionality in the Matrix, because that's certainly a thing. I don't disagree with that. Another one of my favorite things about the Lego movie is the amount of snark and just really funny jokes that get thrown in there. They're very witty, they're very quick. So the time you want Batman or the phone to save them, it's hurry up, let's get to the Batmobile. And it blows up. Then you get Wonder Woman, let's go to the invisible jet. And they're both like, dang it.
And so that literally happens in the Matrix. They're like, oh, there's a phone right here. And then they run a dump truck into it or whatever.
That's a good point. I like it.
It's a kid's movie, but they definitely put a lot of jokes in there for the tired parents that had to go to the theater with their kid for them to laugh at.
Because there's so many pop culture references that like a kid, like one, if you've seen The Matrix, you're watching this movie laughing the whole time going like, oh my gosh, I came to the Lego movie to see what this was all about. And it turned out it's The Matrix. But having Superman and Green Lantern interactions, having Batman show up and be so silly, going to the Western world and act like a cowboy. I'm a cowboy, bang, bang, shoot, shoot, bullet, bullet. Like, it's just over the top silly that plays with the tropes. It's done really well. I do want to go back to the themes and lessons of The Matrix.
Okay.
Because it ends differently. That's where the two movies take a turn, where at the end of The Matrix, the one becomes special and wins because he can beat up the bad guys, right? And he can beat up the bad guys better than anybody can beat them up before. But we don't really see an end or a resolution. We just go like, there's more people like me and we're coming for you, right? That's where it breaks. In the Lego movie, they're like, well, we have to defeat the bad guy and those ideas. So in order to do that, they turn him good. In essentially ending that threat, right? It could have ended that they kill him, whatever. Like, he's not going to be squirting super glue all over anything anymore. With The Matrix, were they trying to set it up for the sequel, or was it just kind of like, well, that's it? He doesn't save the world.
I'd have to go back and look and try to find out, but I'm pretty sure The Matrix was intended to be more than one movie. I'm pretty sure while they were making it, they were showing the studio, this is going to blow people's minds. We are doing really cutting edge stuff. It's going to make you a ton of money, and we're going to follow it up with more stories about Neo and Trinity and the crew, and more about Zion, and more about all these things that were hinted in that first movie but never resolved purposefully. I don't know that the Lego movie was purposely made for a part 1 and part 2. I think it was made and then a surprisingly popular movie that created Lego Movie 2 and the Batman Lego movie, and who knows what else since then. I know there are, when I searched for it on my Apple TV yesterday, there was a bunch of series like Star Wars Rebels, but Lego things that I imagine were all created after the popularity of the Lego movie.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that I actually like the ending of The Matrix. I like the whole movie of The Matrix. And I like it being left to my imagination of, wow, now he's this cool Superman who can reform the Matrix and go off to his adventures and, you know, whatever's going to be will be.
But if you go
what was the lesson? What was the theme?
I don't know if there is necessarily a lesson in The Matrix, except that there's more out there, that once you open your eyes to it and find out what your specialist or your superpower or how you fit into the anti-establishment, that it then becomes your responsibility to recruit others and rage against the machine.
Rage against the machine, I guess, is just it. Yeah. I mean, it just sticks really heavily to that one theme. And I don't know that there's any that it teaches us anything. Maybe it doesn't. It's just a beautiful mosaic of anti-establishment.
We're also standing here 20 years later, right? We have the understanding of Matrix 2 and Matrix 3 and what they did with the storyline. Imagine if we didn't have those movies, what would we be saying about it is exactly this.
It's hard to accept that the Lego movie has more complicated themes than the Matrix.
But it does.
Okay, is it more complicated or more kid-friendly? Because do you want a 6-year-old to go home and think about a dystopian possibility? Or do you want a kid to go home at 6, 7, 8 years old and be like, oh, that was a fun movie?
It is a lot less existential almost. In The Matrix, if we're drawing the direct parallels, then the main antagonist is bad cop, right? It's like the chief agent. And then there's the establishment as a big looming threat. But in the Lego movie, they take the establishment and they make it into a character. They make it Lord Business.
Mm-hmm.
But the layer above that is they make it the kid's dad.
Right.
And so it's playing to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right, Andrew. It's playing to the audience and being not as heavy because it becomes relatable to a kid who would play Legos with their parents.
Which is another thing. When Emmett gets the piece of resistance on his back and he starts going to the different worlds and meeting the new people, is that him escaping the Matrix? Or is him going into the real world, him escaping the Matrix? Is there a Matrix inside of the Matrix? Because the Legos aren't the real world, because there's another real world outside of that.
Right. So it does kind of seem like there's a one-to-one, but really it's more of the theme of the world is very limited, and there's another world out there that's very different. That's what he's seeing as he's going through all the different Lego tables. And at the end, the added bonus of them going into the world of the kid and the dad is another layer of it, but it's more of a theme than it is a one-to-one in that way. And it speaks to how good of a movie the Lego movie is, because it has those different layers and it plays with it so much, even though it is like very clearly a direct outline cut and paste from a lot of other movies, most notably The Matrix. Like, they're not trying to hide it. They're not trying to hide it at all. They're doing it on purpose. But to your thing, like, well, in a kid's movie, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Kids movies don't always think about that. There are a lot of very two-dimensional kids movies. We just watched the movie Luca, which is the new like Pixar movie that came out. And we were watching it with my nephew, which is Andrew's younger cousin. And we looked at it like, I think the point of this movie, the lesson and theme of this movie is don't do what your parents tell you and everything will be super cool.
Don't follow your conscience. Don't listen to what your parents tell you. Do whatever you want and it'll always work out.
It was really weird.
Well, don't give too much credit to some of these movie studios where at the end of the day, they know parents will take kids to a kid movie. Yeah. So there are a ton of kids movies out there that if you looked for a theme or moral, you're gonna say, why did I let my kid watch this movie? So that's certainly something to be said about the industry. At the end of the day, they can make a movie for X amount of dollars. They can average X amount of dollars in income from that movie. Not all of them are going to be well thought out, which again appeals to what you just said, that the Lego movie is actually a really good movie. Kid movie or not.
Kid movie or not. If it was made, it's put a different sheen on it, but do like a shot for shot action movie of like a remake of The Matrix, it's a better Matrix movie because it has those layers at the end. Like there's actually a resolution that could be lasting.
How many 9-year-olds went to watch the Lego movie in the theaters and got the joke where Lando Calrissian hit on Wild Style?
Well,
like 9-year-olds that watch Star Wars with their dads and moms would get that reference.
Oh my God. We got 2 great jokes just from that like 6 seconds that Lando was there. We got that joke and we got the cape joke.
The cape joke was amazing. And it was thrown right in. You could miss it. If you're not paying attention.
Yep.
Well, I will say the most obvious visual, I've seen this before between The Matrix and the Lego movie, is the way the master builders can see the parts and have the numbers pop up. Yes, and they turn it a translucent, glowy color, and then boom, 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 they make a thing. And then for that to finally happen for Emmett at the end, tied with where they talk about the other world, that Emmett's mind was so blank he could see the other world, which was the child's hands, right? That was like the scene where he steps into the Matrix for the first time.
Yes, and it's like the all white room.
Yes.
Empty and yeah.
So those are 2 very visual, okay, how is this not the Matrix? Very, very obvious. Even if you had never seen the Matrix before and were described what those scenes look like, you'd have those two
They call him the special instead of the one. It's so silly. I love it.
And also, that scene is hilarious because the reason that he can see the man is because his head is so empty that there was nothing to clear. I feel like that's hilarious.
And there's lots of butt jokes.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
I mean, the first 30 seconds of the film, he's coming, watch your butts.
That's right.
Kids movie. I love it. I'm going to say, Andrew, wonderful job. I love how organically you came about this comparison idea. And for our listeners to know, Andrew had seen the Lego movies first.
We saw them like in the theaters when they came out because it was a kid's movie you take your kid to.
And then you were showing him the Matrix for the first time, born this idea.
Absolutely. Wait a minute. This is just the Lego movie. Just like when I was sitting in the theater, I'm like, wait a minute, this is just the Matrix. But it's super fun. You could have yourself a worse evening or a worse couple of nights than watching the Matrix and the Lego movie back to back, and then writing into nerdbestfriends@gmail.com with your comparisons and ideas of how they are similar or the same. And what I'd really love to hear is some of those bigger themes and lessons that maybe we glossed over, like what the different symbol. There's so much symbolism in the Matrix and things, and how they drew that out in a more cartoonish way in the Lego movie. We'd love to hear about it.
Okay, so to close out our episode today, Rob and Andrew, what is the nerdiest thing you did this week?
You want to go first?
I'll go first. The nerdiest thing I did this week was drive 90 minutes both ways out of town to go teach a marching band. I was a big band nerd. In high school, I was in the marching band. I became the drum major of the marching band. After that, I worked my way through college, writing marching band shows and teaching marching. I couldn't get away from it. And then I eventually did. I got myself away for about 10 years. And I got sucked back in, but man, did it feel good being out there on the lines, watching grid, teaching foot technique, clicking the block. It was like riding a bike. So pretty nerdy out there in the parking lot with the high school marching band.
Before you go, Andrew, I'll jump in because I tagged along for a couple of those rehearsals this week. Just like Rob, we were in marching band together. I marched in college. I became a band director, and I then the last 2 years spent time as a school administrator. So it has been a couple of years since I've taught band, and I jumped in the car and volunteered some time in Weird Connections. We talk a lot about connections and nerd connections. The school that Rob went to work band for, the director there took over the job that I left, my first job out here in Southern California, before moving to the school she's currently at. So there's some connections there, and I had a great time. It was super hot, but it's great how easily and quickly we can reflex those muscles and thoughts and ideas to teach current high school students about marching band. What about you, Andrew?
The nerdiest thing I did this week was I watched Black Widow for the first time. And Black Widow, spoilers ahead, in the opening scene when they kill the lady and it's like, oh no, Oskana. I immediately said, oh, Oskana, that's Kraven the Hunter's wife from the Spider-Man comics.
I would never have picked that up.
What?
Yeah, exactly. We're like, wait a minute. We just saw the Kraven the Hunter origin story. How many movies are going to go by before that pays off?
Wow.
Big catch. In 3 years, I want you to come back on this podcast when the Kraven the Hunter movie comes out. And I want you to know that we called it.
Well, and that also sometimes doesn't happen. There was a thing in The Dark Knight, I think, that was supposed to have born a character, and it never did. When, I'm going to have to look up what it was, but towards the end where they go to tell the wife of the police chief that he was dead, even though he wasn't, and Batman is sitting up in the corner, and the little young son comes out to see him, and that was supposed to be an origin of a different character, and I cannot. I'll have to go back and look.
Probably, but the DC movie universe is a hot mess, and everything falls apart from between movie to movie. So I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wouldn't know. I only watch good superhero movies.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you on that. The Dark Knight is a really great Batman film. At some point when you watch it, we'll talk about it.
Speaking of The Dark Knight, all the nerds watching this on iTunes, in the last scene where there's all the broken robots and the sun behind it and Batman standing there, did the musical cue from The Dark Knight play? Because I felt like I heard the
every time. Yep, every time Batman comes up, there's a variation on that Batman theme from, I think it originated in the Michael Keaton Batman. That bah, 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 bah. And then it was carried over to the animated series in the theme song, and then we'll still hear it in places. And separately in the Lego movie, right before Batman pops out like a telephone, you'll hear that little it's pretty funny.
Another great Easter egg, another good catch there, Andrew. Starting with you, Andrew, what's the nerdiest thing you're going to do next week?
The nerdiest thing I'm going to do next week is play the new hot Pokemon Unite, Pokemon game, Pokemon Nintendo Switch Pro, Nintendo Direct, E3 2021, E3 2021 canceled Twitter. I hope you appreciate all the keywords I'm putting in your podcast for the algorithm.
I think you're speaking in hashtags.
Mm-hmm. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. It's so the algorithm knows to send this out to all the people. The new Pokemon MOBA game came out yesterday, and I got it, and I'm gonna play it, because I'm something of a gamer myself.
Oh boy.
Kind of a pro gamer, esports, E3 2021.
So it's a mobile game?
It's for the Switch. It feels like a mobile game because you log in daily to get your rewards. You do your daily challenges so you can get the loot boxes to get you the in-game currency to buy the new Pokemons.
So what you're saying is it's going to be a daily thing until you start school, and it's going to be, uh-oh.
Oh, for sure.
Unless it does come out on his phone, and then he's going to be doing it at school and getting in trouble.
Oh, yeah, good point. No, that sounds like fun. Pokemon.
Pokemon MOBA.
Yeah.
How about you, Rob? What's the nerdiest thing you're going to do next week?
Well, next week I'm on a vacation from nerdiness. I'm going out of town. So all of the Dungeons and Dragons games, all the board game nights, all that stuff is canceled. So I'm going to guess the nerdiest thing I'll do next week is I'm going to spend the majority of my travel time making spreadsheets and charts and scheduling the next month's worth of games. I have to make out the calendar and then figure out which days I'm going to prep for which games and try to put together not only a schedule for my nerd games, but a schedule for all the prep that goes into all these role-playing games that I'm running. So I think the iPad will be loaded up with gaming PDFs, and I'll probably have a pad of paper there on the little tray in the airplane, and I'll be scheduling and doing stuff like that. That's what I'm planning to spend that time on.
Someone like steals your device to try to get your information at the airport. What's a Dungeons and Dragons?
Well,
What's the Ghost of Saltmarsh?
It sounds like an awesome trip, though, to be able to nerd out on craft beer.
That's the idea. Yes, we're going to be sampling a lot of Colorado breweries next week.
Amazing. For me, the nerdiest, I have to go back to work next week. So my time for nerding out is significantly diminishing. I'm going to try to finish my stack of summer reading, my summer books that I wanted to finish, both graphic novels and books, because we have school starting in, 3-4 weeks from now. And so time becomes significantly harder. So I'm going to try to nerd out on my reading next week while I'm sitting in service trainings and whatnot. Thank goodness for technology.
Oh, you'll be reading on your device while you're... Good luck. I hope it's not too distracting.
What I'm really hoping for, and what we always hope for, is that the sessions that I'm sitting in are engaging. And if that be the case, then that'll be my evening time. We'll see how it goes.
There's a first time for everything.
What are you talking about? You can't sit in meetings. You can't just sit there and listen to what the man is telling you. You got to rebel against the system.
You got to fight against the machine.
You got to fight against the machines. You read your graphic novels in your meeting.
What you don't realize is there's a spark of specialness in you. And if you just opened your eyes to it, you could change everything.
I know it sounds like a cat poster, but it's true.
Well played, Andrew. Well played. I'll search for my Morpheus while I am sitting in the Leadership Institute next week.
All right, everybody.
With that said, thank you for listening to I've Seen This Before, Part 1, The Matrix and the Lego Movie. Next episode, we have another guest, and we are going to be talking about nerd culture and where that Venn diagram intersects with chosen families in the LGBTQ community, and talking about a book called The Wisdom of Gunkles and how the author of that book is connected to both Rob and myself. So until then, thank you for joining us. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter at NerdBestFriends, and also Facebook. You can write to us, nerdbestfriends@gmail.com, all spelled out. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Can't wait till next time. Thanks, everybody.
I have never seen this man before in my life.
Thanks.